When have you enjoyed or at least not hated when you lost something in a game?
Well, my first thought is in a game like XCOM or a game like Darkest Dungeon, losing a character is often not a failure state. It's just a setback. When you lose, it doesn't like reset your save. It doesn't like put you back right before you lost. You know, and the game treats it as part of the experience and doesn't expect you to redo. That is definitely different from like losing a stealth segment and having to start over again in Spider-Man.
So like if it incorporates it into the progress that you're making, if it's part of the story that's unfolding, and it doesn't like set you back and make you start over.
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of immediately makes you think of like roguelikes, you know, for instance. That's kind of the perfect example of something that is incorporating failure or loss into the actual gameplay loop. And with roguelikes, you know, with Hades or Binding of Isaac or something like that, like it's pretty dramatic in State of Decay. If you lose a character, that character's gone, but it doesn't like start you all the way from the beginning again. But in something like Hades, any roguelike like that, it's baked into the gameplay that like you hit a wall and you start all the way over. Isn't it weird that that's a genre? My favorite genre is the one where I fail all the time. That's interesting that caught on.
So Dark Souls does do that thing, Nick, where it makes you go back. Like it's not like State of Decay or some of the more strategy type games where like if you lose something, you just have to kind of like move on with it. Yeah. So why does Dark Souls like work for you? Like why do you enjoy it?
It's not that it's not unpleasant. Just it's compelling enough to get me to go back though, I think. I just think that like you're chasing a bigger goal in Dark Souls and the ultimate mastery and the ultimate, I don't know, just the failures are just part of that process, I think. Which also, I think Dark Souls is a fundamentally consistent game. You die to a boss and you go, if only I had blank. It's generally on you for not being good enough at the game. No, it does have exceptions, but seldom is it if you feel like the game is cheap.
So like it's being fair to you, and so because it's feeling fair, if you lose, it's because you made a mistake and you understand that makes it better.
I think so.
I was thinking about this question. How is it that Dark Souls is fun? How is it that I keep playing Dark Souls despite the fact that the failures are catastrophic and like sometimes extremely frustrating? I wonder if sometimes expectation has a big part of it too. Like when you're playing Dark Souls, like you know what you're getting into. You're like, okay, this is going to be an experience where I repeatedly suck and die and do the same part over and over again. But like if I'm playing through, I don't know, like if I'm playing through Skyrim and I just did a huge stealth segment or something and then I forgot to save or the game didn't auto save and then I die and then I get set back like 15 minutes. Like in Dark Souls, that's just the game. But in any other game, you're like, are you serious? That just like, and then you get super pissed off and then you close the game and you don't play it again. So I feel like expectation is a big part of that. If you're expecting to fail, it's a lot easier to have a pill to swallow.
Yeah, maybe you're right. And you know, Nick, you were talking about how like in this game and in other games, it tends to like incorporate your failures into the story as it goes forward and doesn't make you like repeat content. Dark Souls does make you repeat content, but it does also seem to be that the progression of Dark Souls is learning how to fight these enemies. And so when you lose to them, that's actually part of you learning. And so that feels perhaps part of that progression.
Yeah, it's also canonized that you die and you're reborn. Like that's a part of Dark Souls, it's part of Bloodborne and all those. Like the game doesn't stop. It doesn't say, oops, no, that didn't happen. It's just part of the story, which I think is cool. You know, you play an XCOM, you lose a soldier, it's part of the story. The game goes on. The game doesn't grind to a halt and reverse and go back and say, just kidding, you have to play those 15 minutes of Skyrim content over because you didn't play the last 30 seconds, right?
So it canonizes it. That's interesting.
That is such a like uniquely video game problem of like, how do you like canonize failure? Because failure is often catastrophic. So like, you know, I'm playing The Last of Us and, you know, I die and then it's a really horrific death scene, but then, you know, it just starts over. How they couldn't canonize that in this, like, and maybe there's some way they could like, I don't even know. I've got no idea how you could make that work in a game like that. But I feel like in general, I do prefer whenever a game finds a way to make it justified. It's always so refreshing and it feels more legitimate, especially if the loss like means something and I lose something, or, you know, I lose a character or a teammate or something like that.
I guess that maybe something that feels frustrating about it is that you feel like you're wasting time. Whereas in Dark Souls and in this game and in a lot of games that kind of canonize your failures, it doesn't feel like the stuff that you did doesn't count. Or like the time that you spent was doing something that ultimately didn't end up counting as part of the story.
Like didn't exist. Yeah.